or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Once again to the story behind the story. I'm your host, Dr. H. Fruad. Yes, indeed. Welcome to the machine. Folks, we've got a few emails that have come out. Just to do a little house cleaning before we get into our guest and his wonderful, informative book, Abomination. Yes, indeed, Mr. William Ramsey is joining us again for conclusion of an amazing interview. Thank you for your emails and feedback from last week's show. Very positive responses. Yes, thank you for that, folks. And I know this is a dark subject. I understand that. But my goodness, we have to understand that, we meaning we the people. If we don't understand what's happening on a bigger scale, how can we ever hope to fix it? You know, it's like any mechanic will tell you, you got to diagnose the problem correctly in order to make the car engine run again. Okay, so we're going to delve into subject matter that the mainstream media dare not touch and will not touch for what should be fairly obvious reasons. Before we go there, again, just wanted we had a mass email come out from Nighthawk. Once again, if you've been trying to access the archives, please, it appears like there's been some hacking going on. The archives have been blocked. I understand the story behind the story archives is one of those. I don't know if that's just coincidence. He wanted me to make sure you understand it's not anything against me as a host or the management of of Revolution Radio. It's just one of those silly things that somehow the show that we had last week was not available on download. It'll hopefully be back up. They're working on it. Just again, I know a number of you sent me some emails saying, why can't I download the archives of your show last week? Wanted to hear it. That's why, folks. I don't think it's anything. I know it's not anything with the management of Revolution Radio, but there has been, appears to be anyway, a hack. So without further ado, folks, again, just remember that there is no corporate sponsorship here. There's no advertising. What makes this radio station operate, this internet show, is simply donations from you, the listening audience, and that's it, period. So please, even though you can't download the archives, there's probably a good reason for that. Please, we still ask you to support as much as you possibly can this radio station by your donation. So, folks, without further ado, let's jump into the subject matter of tonight's show. Again, my special guest tonight is Mr. William Bill Ramsey. Mr. Ramsey has written a number of books. The one we're looking at tonight is simply titled Abomination. Yeah, the title says it all, folks. Devil Worship and Deception in the West Memphis 3 Murders. Now, yes, indeed, I understand this happened quite a few years ago now, and back in 1993. But the reason why we're talking about it tonight is because with Hillary poised to take the reins as POTUS. Okay, I'm telling you, folks, there's so much behind the story here that you have to understand, and part and parcel of this is understanding what my guest will be explaining tonight, the reasons why he felt inspired, felt it important to even write and publish this book from the beginning. So without further ado, welcome to the story behind the story once again, Mr. William Ramsey. Thank you so much.
Dr. Rob, thank you very much for having me.
My goodness, we got some people talking through the internet with the show last week. I don't know what kind of feedback you received, but I tell you, it was amazing.
Well, every time I do a show on a newer station, the host gets bombarded with threats, accusations, and statements that the West Memphis Three are innocent beyond a reasonable doubt, or innocent without any question. So my sympathies are to you, because I'm sure you got quite a few people who said never have me back on the show, and that's usually what happens.
Well, we did that, but I'm really quick to push delete buttons anymore, and I can't, I don't have the time to sift through all the gobbledygook garbage. I'm probably positive that, pretty sure anyway, that the station received their share of problem complaints. But yeah, you're right. And from an attorney's background, and reading your book and delving into your website even more, William, I got to just, take my hat off to you, tip my hat to you for seeing what's going on here in an absolute obscene miscarriage of justice, in my opinion.
I agree. And that's why I titled the book Abomination. It really is, for me, an abomination that they were released. And I think in a larger aspect, the fact that they were able to pretty much PR the majority of Americans into thinking they were innocent, I think is also a deceptive trick, and is also an abomination. So,
and that's what kind of wanted to focus on tonight, is the power, if you want to call it that, of the mainstream media to sway and even to build public opinion. It's no secret, really, that's happening. But combined with, Americans seem to have a very short memory as far as all of the corruption that was involved in the Clinton White House and the Clinton governor's mansion there in Arkansas, as you point out in the first pages of your book.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, the corruption of the Clintons is a 30-year tale. And I think we're seeing through this kind of WikiLeaks release that it shows how much the media is colluding with political figures. I think particularly we're seeing that they're colluding 100% with Hillary Clinton, but I suspect that goes even farther back, into the Bush administrations, the Obama administrations, to the earlier Clintons, that they've always had a inordinately close relationship with the mass media outlets to the detriment of the American public.
Right, and one of my favorite websites over the years has been truthfeed.com. Their stories have been right on point. Their footnotes, the verification of their stories is right accurate. And just recently, they posted, again, following up with Julian Assange's WikiLeaks posts, and the headline I want to give you a chance to comment on is simply, WikiLeaks exposed the Saudis paying Hillary, as she was Secretary of State, to turn Libya into an ISIS hellhole. This is a great story, because I've done many shows over the years, William, showing to me it's conclusive proof the House of Saud is Illuminati Jesuit / Jewish. It's an amazing reality. They're duping the Arabian people completely with what's happening here. And so we see Hillary Clinton taking her marching orders from the House of Saud to pull down the Gaddafi regime and the murders that went on there, and the billions transferred into the Clinton Foundation is absolutely grounds for me for high treason.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like treason to me. So, and that's just kind of one particular event in a whole series of events where money was provided to the Clinton Foundation in what looks like pay-for-play responses. So it's disgusting. And the kind of money that was being bandied, passed around, amounts to the hundreds of millions of dollars. It's incredible sums of money. So it's naked corruption. I think that if people want to vote for her, they're just going to get another 4 to 8 years of just blatant warmongering and corruption that this country's never seen before. It'll just be disgusting.
Yeah, there's a website that I gave to Mr. Rhodes to post on the chat room. It's Malaya Web. It's the www.webmalaya.info. Jesuit Illuminati House of Saud exposed, and this is what I've been saying for 10 years during the before the Bush administration, both 1 and 2. George Herbert Walker Bush, as well as George W. The connections to the House of Saud through the British Jesuits. It's an amazing story, William. It really is. But you look at the top of the top of the food chain, you actually see a satanic coven cult working this system. So it to me it ties in so completely to what's going on in the Memphis 3, Johnny Depp's involvement with Damien Eccles' case, etc., etc. It seems at first glance, at first blush, to be a little bit disconnected, but when you really dig deep, you see the tentacles form. So are you there?
I was on mute. Sorry, I was talking to myself.
Okay.
I had you on mute. So I think that they're very similar things that happen between the West Memphis 3 and the kind of Clinton administration manipulating the media. There's no major media outlets that questioned the official story of the West Memphis 3 as being innocent, being railroaded, being, pigeonholed as being wearing black. And so I see that same type of media PR as groups of people are involved in getting that story out behind the scenes, whether it's Johnny Depp or Henry Rollins or these other people who you don't see the sub rosa connections, but you see them manipulating people like Larry King or people that are on The View, the women who are on The View. And it's really remarkable to show how teamwork and team effort by a group of people can pull the lever of the mass media in this country.
Indeed. Okay, so where do you suggest we go from here? I'm going to let you kind of just take the lead. What do you want to what message do you want to give to the listening audience, not only on this show, but if you had an hour on CNN, what would you want to tell people about this?
I mean, I think the majority, if you step back and look at all 3 of my books, it's really the influence of Aleister Crowley upon the 20th century. And that would be my general message, is to try to educate or make people aware of the fact that Crowley still is influencing political and cultural events in this country and the world. And the events of the West Memphis 3 is just one of them. Damien Eccles, the kind of chief nefarious figure of the West Memphis 3, was a Crowley acolyte. I just posted stuff about him today where he's memorializing Crowley's birthday on October 12th. And I also show in my book, Prophet of Evil, where I talk about Crowley, but also I show his ideological and numerological impact upon the events of 9/11. The fact that all those numbers, 11, 77, 93, 175, can directly be traced back to the Western esoteric tradition and to Aleister Crowley. And then my book, Children of the Beast, talks about all these people who were influenced by Crowley and did the kind of things that he said. Crowley's main axiom was, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. It's an 11-letter phrase. And he always encouraged his followers to do stuff. So I talk about Crowley in this book, Children of the Beast, and all the people that he influenced. People like Ian Fleming and Dennis Wheatley, who was the Stephen King of his day. Harry Hay, who was the founder of the homosexual movement in the United States. He used to play the piano at OTO rituals that involved Jack Whiteside Parsons. So he was around. This guy who was the founder of the homosexual movement was influenced by Crowley and even referenced Crowley in some of his later books. People like Arthur Clarke, Kenneth Anger, the founder of kind of occult films and really the MTV generation, was this guy who was stone cold admitted follower of Crowley, and he lived with Bobby Bouzoulet, who was one of the first people who murdered in the Manson family. And I write about them in Children of the Beast. I talk about Timothy Leary, talk about the Beatles, Jimmy Page, the Doors, and even David Bowie, who was influenced and admired Crowley. So I really would send the message out that this person who wanted to be Satan's right-hand man is still influencing cultural and political events. So that would be it. And one of them is the West Memphis Three.
Well, I had an interesting email. Again, I got about maybe 150 concerning our show last week. One in particular was kind of interesting because I could tell that this individual, male or female, I don't know, is into Satanism because they were fully looking forward to this Monday night, All Hallows Eve Samhain, as being a very world-changing event happening. Now my imagination can kind of tell me what that might be. But I would really like to put a tracer bug on Hillary and Bill Monday night to see where they should go.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, something.
I would be interested as you are. I would definitely want to know what they're up to. I'm sure she's sweating bullets right now after the FBI kind of wanted to follow the emails that her right-hand woman had, Uma Habedin and Anthony Weiner had. So it looks like they had classified materials, which doesn't look good for her. So,
well, it's interesting because, one of my, I had him on quite a bit here as a guest. He's a clinical psychologist in New York. He's incredible as a guest. His website is called iPredator. He's exposing the predation going on, sexual abuse and that type of thing in a massive scale. And he's the interviews we've had with him on The Story Behind the Story have been archived and followed through with some of their FBI's top cybernet agents have been following our work with that. And one of the things that I exposed was who the hell is Huma Abedin was one of my shows. And I received some emails that I can't believe the FBI had to learn something from my show, basically. I just it blew me away. Really? You guys are supposed to be the experts, not me.
Yeah, that's bad. I mean, they, I think one of the James O'Keefe videos featured her in there saying that people who are supposedly Islamophobic are, not properly politically correct. So she's definitely a pro-Islam, type person who's really at the right hand of a very sick, kind of brain damaged woman, Hillary Clinton. So, I mean, to think that they're 2 weeks out from having this very ill warmonger become the president of the United States should send chills down the spine of every American. So, I think it's remarkable that it's not a national security issue that Huma Abedin is that close to Hillary Clinton, who just recently in one of the WikiLeaks said she still isn't right in the head, referencing Hillary Clinton, and that's somebody who's very close to her, so she should know firsthand. So,
well, you follow again I just scratched the tip of the iceberg. I believe you look at Huma Abedin's family, their connections to ISIS, ISIL, to Al Qaeda. Okay, you see the connections, and then you follow that through to the House of Saud, which is clearly giving marching orders to who's ever in the White House, be it Republican or Democrat, Obama or Bush, and Hillary is just lining up to the pig trough for more of it. It's like, who is the House of Saud? And you're talking some very dark, satanic. I haven't linked it to Aleister Crowley, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised, being the British connection there.
Yeah, I mean, they were installed by the British after World War I. So, I know that Lawrence of Arabia and one of the Philby family, I think Kim Philby's dad, was very much involved in establishing the Saudis' control over Arabia. So there's always been a British intelligence aspect to that. and Crowley himself was British intelligence. So, so there, there might be some kind of interesting crossover between Crowley and some of those people, like the Philbys. I know that Crowley himself, his chief kind of acolyte, the person who was supposed to pick up his mantle as Crowley's follower, was a guy by the name of Tom Dryburgh, who, to English people, they know his name. It kind of was like the leader of the Labour Party at one point in England, and he himself was involved in spying for the British Crown against the communists, and he was actually involved with the Cambridge Five, the notorious traitors to England, and actually spent time in Russia with one of them. So Crowley, this guy who was Tom Dryburgh, who was also knew the Crays, who were kind of notorious mobsters from the East End of London. But this guy Dryburgh was involved in a lot of this kind of strange underground spying world that was taking place in England, in London, and he was often in contact with Crowley.
Well, there you go. I'm looking there on this website that I put onto the chat room. It's very amazing because it gives a timeline there on the right side, how this all came to be. Harry Philby, he writes, father of the notorious spy Kim Philby, was key, as you just said, a British Jesuit Secret Service agent, and he was very instrumental to the establishment of Saudi Arabia as a nation state. My goodness, it's all there. The pictures.
It's very strange. Like Philby was so close to the head of the first Saud king that he was allowed into his harem, and the Saudi I think the Saudi head at that time had to have, he had something like 50 wives as a way to basically fuse all the tribes together. So it's that the part of the what was his name, Arthur Philby, his story was very strange, and that's probably why Philby, his son, was very unusual and betrayed his country.
Well, there it is. I mean, you look at you got the billions of dollars that are generated and then go into Hillary's back pocket through the foundation. Come on now, why is the media silent on this? This is a huge story.
Yeah, it's incredible. The silence of the media on the face of all of these crimes is unique. It's remarkable. And some people are just saying that they're outright being bribed. And that would be a good explanation for why the media, and I think it's a larger problem with our country, is that we have had this kind of centralized media that are basically the fronts for these major corporations, Disney and Microsoft, who, if one side of that corporation can get its beak dipped, so to speak, they're going to, in my opinion, their media outlets are going to be sympathetic to that person who pays them off. So it's not necessarily overt bribes. I don't know. Maybe something in WikiLeaks will show up, but it sure looks like somebody's getting paid off. So it's unfortunate.
The final paragraph that is on this website, again, webmalaya.info, and I quote now, with the false prophets, with an OFITS, not PHETS for those Mormons who may be listening, with the false prophets of billions of petrodollars, Saudi Arabia has been able to buy politicians, TV stations, I'm talking American now, TV stations, universities, newspapers, radio stations, publishing houses, sports teams, churches, etc., and the caliphate became the center of Wahhabism, or in other words, radical Islam. So there's a book called Good Muslims versus Bad Muslims. So what do you make of that? I mean, see how it connects the dots?
I don't know how foreign governments that are antagonistic or are not friendly with the United States are able to make investments that sway our government. It doesn't seem like that should be legal. And I think, at least some of Trump's reforms that he's stating will say that, that you can't lobby for a certain amount of time, and foreign foreign donations won't be allowed, I think those are great. And I think that, we have a breakdown in basic law. So I think that, this outside influence is not necessarily in any way, shape, or form positive for our country. I mean, to a larger extent. So I think it's a cause for alarm.
So I haven't had a chance to read or look at your book on 9/11 and Crowley, but isn't it? I'm sure you agree that following that, a week or so following September 11th, there were all of these Saudi Saudi House of royal families taken out of America by protection of the Bush administration.
Right, it was part of the Bin Laden family, which is a very large family. Bin Laden was a huge construction contractor, and there was some kind of intelligence aspect between our connection with the Saudis and 9/11. And these supposed hijackers were all Saudi, but a lot of them were never proven. But yeah, it's disturbing. I mean, the Bin Laden was created as this kind of Goldstein character from 1984, somebody to have a 5 minute shot scream at. But he was actually a son of privilege. He had been to England. There are pictures of him in Western wear, but he was characterized by the American media as a radical Muslim, and who had been involved in other bombings. But for me, that was just a big intelligence op. And, I think that the trick of 9/11 was really something else. And what I show in my book is the occult markers and underpinnings of the events of 9/11 and how it was actually a kind of a mega mass ritual. And that the fact that the people who orchestrated 9/11 put these numbers into the event shows their intent. I talk about how the 9/11 event and its intent was to create a imperial presidency that would transform the world, and which it did. It actually transformed our American political system and world politics. And I think you can see through the event that that was done. And I basically, my argument was that the event was really something that was tied back to the occult, where it was kind of like an aristocratic revolution, and got rid of kind of all moral principle. And so I tied that. I think I made a good argument that was integrated into the event by the people. Crowley himself was an unrepentant elitist. He really thought of really not much about middle or lower class people. He thought them basically one of his statements was the slave shall serve. And one of his statements was, despite all its drawbacks, there was never a better social system than the feudal. So it is, as far as it is derived from the patriarchal. So he believed in a feudal society. And I believe that his ideas were applied politically through the 9/11 event. And he believed in an aristocratic revolution. He said, there's only one solution. This is a direct quote. There's only one solution: to pick out the diamonds from the clay, cut them, polish them, and set them as they deserve. Attempt no idiotic experiments with the muck of the mind. You will observe that I am advocating an aristocratic revolution, and so I am. So you see this kind of ideas in 9/11, where the event itself was not just a political or sociological force that changed, but also a financial. This money was moved from certain aspects towards our national defense, and all of those defense companies became flush with cash. And after 9/11, they dropped interest rates to zero, creating this kind of bubble market of mortgage rates that ended in 2008, just when George Bush got out of office. So this was Crowley, one of his things about magic, one of his statements about magic was that the whole idea of magic is to facilitate change in accordance with will. And, I think that that's exactly what 9/11 was, is to facilitate change in accordance with this kind of will to new war, to create a more feudal society, and to make all these people money. So I make all those arguments in my book, Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11, and the New World Order. And the the reason I titled it, had that kind of long title, is I don't think most people would put those ideas together. They wouldn't put 9/11, Aleister Crowley, and the New World Order together. And I think I make an argument that they do belong together in people's understanding. So
Well,
that's
that's very, very interesting. It truly is. When I connect the dots myself over the years, I remember shows that I've done exposing, when Obama took office, change you can believe in, right? And he's given the prize, the Nobel Peace Prize, for heaven's sakes, and he hasn't done a darn thing yet.
right.
And then he comes in, and suddenly it's just the same. It's more of the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then Hillary enters the picture, and look what happens in Libya. Oh my heavens! I had a Libyan national, woman I had met kind of by accident. She's getting her like a third PhD at the University of Utah, and I talked to her, and she was just aghast at the media bias against Gaddafi. And so I asked her to come on the show, and she gave a most incredibly articulate expose of truth of life under Gaddafi as far as a woman is concerned, and what life is really like there in Libya. And she spoke out very, very, I guess, fearfully about the influence of this darkness, she said, to take away their standard of living in Libya and to take out their beloved leader, Gaddafi. I mean, it was an amazing interview.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that's another example where this wealthy country comes into another wealthy country. Libya was, Gaddafi was incredibly generous to his population. He would pay for houses when people got married, and they all had a good standard of living, and just literally turned it into a wasteland that still people are still fighting and dying. So Gaddafi was making changes that he wanted to have kind of his own financial system. He wanted independence. And I think for a variety of reasons, there were outside interests that didn't want to allow that. And he literally destroyed the country and had him killed.
What this lady explained on, it's a 2-hour show that we did, and she explained and she documented that the hundreds of millions, if not billions, of dollars that Gaddafi spent on American farm equipment, John Deere green all over. They brought all these in. It was a real largesse for the farm implements, because he was putting to use the water under the Libyan desert, and through a series of aquifers and canals and this and that. He fully was intending, according to her, to turn all of Libya into like a huge breadbasket, and his goal was to feed the entire continent of Africa. No more starvation, And she said that when the bombs started falling, NATO bombs were targeting the infrastructure first.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, why is this not in the media? See, well, it's obvious. Just like you said, it's by design.
It's a totally controlled media, and I don't think that it's actually pernicious towards the American public. The amount of lies and propaganda, I think, are unbearable. I personally don't know anybody intelligent who thinks that the mass media in this country is honest or straightforward, but they reference it to see what the current propaganda, the suite of propaganda ideas are, because they are all the same. They're actually pretty homogeneous through the American media. When they have a propaganda campaign, they all basically say the same thing. So, and this is one of the propaganda campaigns you see right now, is the demonization of Trump as a sex offender, or which, clearly his history may be a little tainted. It's nothing like Bill Clinton, but you can see the propaganda campaign to twist him as these, and I think that goal to twist him as a serial offender takes people's eyes off of Hillary Clinton's criminality. So yeah, I mean, I think the propaganda is bad. I mean, I think most intelligent people are finding different outlets for information, trying to find what the real truth is, because they're not getting it through the media. And the United States government is on a tear. It's just been involved in so many overthrows of governments around the world for the last 15 years. Iraq, Afghanistan, the involvement in Libya, I think possibly some involvement in the Lebanese bombings that Israel did against Lebanon, Ukraine, Honduras. So it's America is definitely, its foreign policy is, I think, being dictated not by ideas that the people of this country want. And a lot of it is kind of like it references what happened, what George Orwell said in 1984. Well, they will blame all these other peoples for your ills and spend the capital of the country on unnecessary wars to maintain the social stratosphere, which, you build below $7 trillion on an Iraq war. Think about where that money could have been spent in the United States. You could take away all student debt. You could buy everybody a quality house, but that's not what they want. That's not what the people at the top want. So I think the American people should see the elite of this country on both parties for the last 15 years as creating unnecessary wars to maintain the social hierarchy and misspend the wealth of the country, which is disgusting. And I think that a lot of people aren't emphasizing that point, where they're misspending your money on unnecessary wars.
That is a good point. I was just kind of watching. I caught the news story. I don't know if you saw it or not last night. They had a world news of what's going on in the Philippines. Mass protests going out demanding that U.S. close all the military bases. They want all U.S. military off of Filipino soil. And this is a pretty high level protest going on. And I turned to my friend who's, Korean War veteran, and I said, "My goodness, how times have changed since the days of MacArthur, where they welcomed American troops in the Philippines. Look what's happened. I mean, man, we are in trouble."
Yeah, I don't think the international opinion of the country is probably at its lowest since World War II or World War I. If you look at all the meddling the United States has been involved in, I don't find that surprising. How many bases do we have all over the world? Major bases, 120 or something, some huge number. Massive amounts of bases in almost every element of the world. There's maybe I can't think of anything where we don't have a major base. So maybe Africa or South America, I'm not sure. But yeah, so for me, I'm not surprised by that. But I think the United States needs to go through a appraisal of what they find important, the foreign policy of this country. I don't think that these wasteful wars are good for the country. So
I think they're all by design, and look who really benefits from it. Does Saudi Arabia benefit through the House of Saud, which is tied, of course, to the Rockefeller/Rothschild groups, which is again is Aleister Crowley once again. See how the tie-ins go. It really. It's a form of elitism, no doubt about it. And what about the average human being that's just chaff, okay? That's just lemmings going off a cliff. That's the way I see it going.
I agree with you. I mean, it's just like Crowley said, the slave shall serve. So I see that elitist mentality. And I definitely believe that a lot of people at the top are familiar with occult ideas through, the Skull and Bones Society. One of the revelations of the WikiLeaks was that Hillary Clinton had something she called the Seventh Floor Group, that she would have sit downs with John Kerry, who was a member of Skull and Bones, and discuss topics. And, I think that that's pretty fascinating, that there's a kind of, and they called that the secret government group, which was also interesting. So I definitely believe that those ideas are out. And Yale itself, the kind of mentality of a East Coast elitist university, I think bleeds through the last, 30 or 40 years of American foreign policy and American social policy. And so I think, this kind of mentality is definitely out there.
Well, don't forget where Hillary went to law school. Where did she go?
Yeah.
I mean, Skull and Bones, it permeates it all. Would you agree with me? It's been my take on politics that at the highest level, it's just, there really is no difference. They want to appear either liberal or conservative, progressive, or whatever you want to call it. but really when it's all, pulled away, it's just a mask. I mean, look.
I think it's a total mask. I think for both sides. I actually think the undercurrent, the real fist behind the mask or whatever, the face behind the mask is a elitist occult group that makes sure that its interests are maintained through masonry, through skull and bones, through occult organizations. That's the real government for me. And I think the secret government, the seventh floor group for Hillary Clinton, shows her connection to that secret government that people have talked about, for 100 years. I can't remember the guy who said it, but he said, there's a government here that people don't talk about in whispers. I wish I could remember that quote. But I do believe Skull and Bones, they can bring you into Skull and Bones. You don't have to be one of the seniors at Yale. You can actually be a member through some other form of initiation, in my understanding. And I wouldn't be surprised that there are other people in power that you don't see that come out of Yale that are affiliated to this secret society. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I believe that quote from President Woodrow Wilson actually said it as he left office and before his death. He said there's a secret power so firmly established you don't whisper it at all. And so I mean, yeah, he knew. That's when, under his administration, of course, the 1913 Federal Reserve Act was passed, et cetera, et cetera. And it really has been all downhill from there. You look at what JFK actually did. For the first time, here's an American president saying, I'm going to expose this. He made these public declarations that the very act of secrecy is repugnant to a free republic, right?
Right.
And he made executive orders to basically order the Treasury to start printing real money again and stop the money power. And surprise, surprise, he's gone. He's killed by a lone gunman. It's craziness. Look at all of it going on. No.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's really the secret government showing its face is the death of JFK on November 22nd, like numerologically important dates. And the cover-up of JFK's death was remarkable in itself. Over 50 people were murdered to maintain that story that, this lone nut from Russia shot the president because he was a communist sympathizer. And though that was just a big deception, that was just a big lie to cover up the fact that people were concerned about Kennedy's détente with Russia and his desire to actually set the country straight, for its financial basis. So it's remarkable. I mean, it's there. We have a secret government. I mean, we definitely have a secret government, I can assure you.
So, okay, we expose this, and we do our best to tell the story behind the story, but the people that are smart enough to understand it have basically been silenced because, again, the media is so skilled at making people believe this is absolute wild, nutty conspiracy theories, as George W. Bush said after September 11th, right?
Right.
But
never least with something in conspiracy theories.
But even the government's official version is a conspiracy theory.
Correct. They conspired to do the damage, no doubt.
I mean, it's like, okay, what's your take? I want to ask you this, and then I want to get back into your book Abomination. But on September 10th, we have the Donald Rumsfeld getting up and announcing in the press conference $2.3 trillion missing from the Pentagon.
Right.
What's your take on that? Where do you think that money went, and why?
Well, that's a great question. I would love to know where that money went. Probably in the pockets of many contractors. Many members of the Pentagon probably have very fat bank accounts. And it was a strategic admission right before an event he knew was going to happen. So, at least in my opinion. So, I would love to know where that money's misspent. I mean, I think it's pretty shocking that we have a government that can blow trillions of dollars without any accountability. And so it's pretty clear that the rank and file, and added to that is the fact that we can't even verify our own voting record. I mean, it's pretty shocking that we're having a major vote in less than 2 weeks, and we can't verify some of these voters. So I think it's the public has really lost its grip on our political system in that regard, in those regards. That we don't. Where's that 2.3? Where'd it go? I don't think there was ever an accounting for that.
Well, I've exposed this, and there's been some books written about it, but again, it's written off as wild and nutty. But look who was the controller. Follow the money. The comptroller of the Pentagon, handpicked by George W. and the House of Saud, Dov Zakheim. Okay, a dual Israeli citizen. He's an ordained rabbi. And isn't it funny that the Pentagon, where the missile actually hit, not the plane, destroyed all the paper trail, destroyed the entire.
Yeah, destroyed the accounting department.
Yeah, isn't that just coincidence?
Yeah, there's tons of dual citizens involved in the events. So, I think that it was a dual American, English, and Israeli operation. But I think at the very core, it was an occult operation that involved the secret society. So, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty terrifying that they can do those kind of actions and get away with it.
It boggles your mind how much just $1 trillion is. A million billion. I mean, come on, that is just mind-boggling, and it's just gone.
Yeah, imagine all the good that could do. I mean, with $5 billion, think what you could do. So, I mean, the structure of our society is maintained by people at the top siphoning off not billions, but trillions of dollars into their own accounts. I was in D.C. from 95 to 98. You'd be surprised how many people knew about the safety and security of Swiss bank accounts. Everybody talked about it. It was incredible. I was like, you know about that? Because they all knew where that extra money could go. And it's incredibly corrupt, even back then, 20 years ago. I was there during the Clinton second administration, first and second. So I was very naive, but just some of those conversations, they were just incredible. And people would laugh. They had this thing called the DC laugh, that when you screwed over the public, you would just crane your head back and laugh up at the sky. And that kind of mentality is probably still there today than it was 20 years ago. So it's a shame. It's a shame. They're really, you can see the elements of the control, like this WikiLeaks event is important for broader, to give insight into past events. It shows how these parties at the top are conspiring to manipulate so many people in the government. You can tell Comey, in my opinion, it's been manipulated. There was a payment from McAuliffe to Comey's, the head of the FBI's second in command, of like $500,000 to $600,000. It's incredibly untoward. It's not. You can't have that happen in a real functioning legal system. That would never happen. So something tells me that that's always been going on. Money's always been exchanging hands. And yeah, it's incredible. It's just incredible that Americans, I mean, it's a swamp. It should be drained. And the Americans should get their hands back on a better grip on their government. They've just lost control. You cannot have open borders. You can't have a vote that can't be verified. That's why Bernie got the election stolen from him. You cannot have. They actually didn't even count the votes in California for the Bernie Clinton primary election. They just said Clinton won. And the guy who was counting the votes in California, oh yeah, we didn't count the vote, but we just know Clinton won. I forgot the guy's name. But you cannot have these kind of breakdowns in the law and order and have a functioning government anywhere, whether it's America, Europe, South America. So it's a shame. I think that it's a shame that Americans have really just kind of dropped the ball in maintaining their best interest in their government. I mean, another thing is the huge bank payout, $25 trillion in 2008 to solidify these corrupt banks. Imagine the amount of money what $25 trillion would do.
See, but here's the point. That's quantitative easing, and all of the money collected in taxes isn't even a fraction of that. So how do you pay? It's just
well, it just shows how corrupt the Federal Reserve is. You can just print out money out of nothing and solidify the underpinnings of the system by paying off all these people all over the world with American dollars for these crappy mortgage securities.
Central bank debit entries on the computer screen. That's really what it's come down to anymore. And that's the insanity of it. He who has the gold makes the rules. But following up on our first interview last week, William, I was trying to dig deeper into Anne Hutchinson's family tree to see if I can find out where Mr. Hutchinson he changed his name, to Damien.
Right. So Michael Hutchison changed the name to his stepfather, Eccles. And so he took Damien Eccles, but his real father, I wish I could remember his name, is Hutchison. Let me see if I can find it. Joe Hutchison. That was his father's name.
So it's not coincidental, I don't think, that Anne Hutchinson is such a central figure in again, Mitt Romney's genealogical tree, the Bush family, and even now I'm finding out the House of Saud connection. It is tied into that central key. No wonder $20 million was raised by the Hollywood elite to come out and to get, Mr. Eccles, Mr. Damien out there. And as it's just funny coincidence, I was just flipping channels the other day, and there's that new redone movie called The Omen. It's redone, modernized. Have you watched that?
I haven't seen the new Omen.
Oh my goodness, it's like talking about what we're talking about.
Wow.
I mean, here's this Damien to come and to be preserved for a special task in the future, the Antichrist structure. It kind of gave me the cold chill willies because of whether it's real or maintained, the bloodline of Hutchinson is alive in this Damien Eccles. I'm telling you.
Well, it might be. I mean, one of the weird things about Eccles is his connections to all these important people and how many important people want to be seen with him. Whether it's Ozzy Osbourne, he's been pictured shaking hands with Ban Ki-moon, who's the head of the UN.
Wow.
So, yeah. So
a convicted murderer is a celebrity.
Yeah. Child murder. Like this girl, Sarah Silverman, takes pictures with him. All these other people. And there's large groups of people who support him, So there's some kind of social movement where people find him important, and it's somewhat mysterious, but I think he's a member. He's a confirmed member of the OTO. I don't know if I discussed that last week, but while in jail, he became a member of Aleister Crowley's Ordo Templi Orientis, and he actually donated all of his occult books to the OTO chapter in Arkansas. And you can see a video about that. I talk about it on my YouTube channel. Just look up William Ramsey Investigates. But the OTO, they make oaths. They take oaths of obedience. So, a lot of these people, I wouldn't be surprised, are a member of Crowley's OTO who are helping him out and lying about it and deceiving and all the stuff. And that's why I titled the book Deception, because there's so much deception going on. I think there's these talking points that go out and people just repeat them all the time. He got arrested because he wore black. He was strange. It's a railroad. It's a witch hunt, blah, blah, blah. So his connections to these important people are really, there's pictures of him with Marilyn Manson, just all these people who are prominent in the kind of occult movements. And
wow,
it's really something else.
Yeah, you're looking at the history of Anne Hutchinson. Listeners can do your own search of Anne Hutchinson, the patron mother goddess of Wiccan Satanism, right? There in Salem, Massachusetts, there's this, right in the Wiccan Museum, there's this huge wax effigy to her and honoring her. Now, who was she? Look back at her life. She was so involved in some weird things that as I pulled up in the actual archives of Salem, there was she was one of her very close friends, 13 women, right? gave birth to a stillborn, deformed child, and the description is right there in the archives. I mean, this thing had a tail, it had horns, it had what's called stickleback thorns up and down its back, and this baby, this thing was buried surreptitiously by Anne Hutchinson in the woods, and because of all these very strange occurrences, she was eventually banished from the Salem region, and she took up residence in a dismal swamp area that was later became Washington District of Criminals. Now that's just amazing to me that her history goes there.
Yeah,
so how tied are these people at the top, and for what purpose? See, that's the overarching question I would pose. Okay, what is their
their ultimate goal is part of an ancient dream. They want a total globe world order of total control.
Gentlemen, take a break again. Yeah, Mr. William, is the incredible investigative. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the second hour of tonight's Story Behind the Story. I'm your host, Dr. A. Truwad. My special guest tonight, Mr. William Ramsey, joins us tonight from California. I want to share with our listeners, William, page 348 in your amazing book. This is a release, Associated Press copy that you've put in your book. I want to read it in its entirety and get your comments on this under Johnny Depp Shares Inc. with Damien Eccles. And I quote, "The man Johnny Depp helped release from Arkansas's death row has become like a brother to him, right down to getting matching tattoos." Quote, "We have some," Depp said Saturday as he touched a tattoo on the right side of his chest. Now, again, folks, this is going back to October 2012, exactly 4 years ago now. Quote, "This one Damien designed. It's one of my all-time favorites, and it means quite a lot to me," Depp told the Associated Press before the premiere of a documentary, West of Memphis, all about Damien Eccles and his two co-defendants. Eccles said whenever he and Depp get together, they often end up in a tattoo parlor. Depp said it's about, quote, "celebrating the moment. You saw those initial documentaries. You make a choice. Am I going to watch the thing and go, wow, that's really horrible, and go out and get a milkshake?" Depp said. Depp, along with Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder, Natalie Maines of the Dixie Chicks, musician Henry Rollins, and filmmaker Peter Jackson, who produced West of Memphis, helped pay the legal fees to free the three men. Quote, "He's been with us every single step of the way, Since we've gotten out, he's become like a brother to me. And that's one of the things we always do, just as part of that bond. Is whenever you get tattoos like that, it's something you carry with you through the rest of your life. And it's really meaningful. End quote. Okay, what is those tattoos and what's so meaningful about them? What's your take on that, William?
Well, it shows that he has the Theban alphabet on the outside of those circular tattoos. The Theban alphabet is the witch alphabet. Supposedly goes back to the kingdom of Thebes in ancient Greece. And the internal part of those tattoos is a sigil. Basically, what they do is put together a box with some kind of named meaning and draw lines between letters or numbers that are important. Then pull the kind of the box with the numbers out and leave the kind of lines. And that's supposed to be a powerful reminder of your ideas or your intention. So those are the tattoos. They actually, Depp and Eccles share 3 tattoos. They also have this wind over heaven tattoo that references the I Ching. I was told by a former occultist that that wind over heaven among occultists represents Lucifer, the Lord of the Air. So that's interesting. They also share a picture of a bird on their right, the top part of their right hands, and it's a crow, which is like a harbinger. The crow represents, I think it's a representation of magic and of ideas. But you'll see Depp has that tattoo with a number of people. So I think that the statement you made shows, how much Depp, who is worth $500 million or something like that, how much Depp was committed to the release of Eccles, and it just shows these guys have a kind of a deeper connection. It's something beyond friendship.
Well, indeed, that's what I wanted to get at here in the next hour, seeing as how we're heading into this black mass of all black masses, according to this email I received, concerning Hillary Rodham Clinton, Bill Clinton in all likelihood, and high-level Satanists. I wonder if Johnny Depp and Nichols have their ticket punched to this. But you mentioned the Theban society of ancient Greece. Well, that goes back in, if having traveled the world and seen those ancient temples of Greece where they've been restored and what went on there, they very much patterned them after a secret society in Egypt. That's where it all came from. And this is, there's documents in what's called the Library of Nag Hammadi, Egypt, that talk about this magic occultic cult that was dominated a lot of Egyptian hieroglyphics as well as the ancient Greeks. But here it is. It's talking about 3 degrees of glory, ascending through a series of taking on and off white clothing, a series of occultic handshakes, and vows given, and rituals concerning sacrificing of humans. This is all part and parcel of what went on anciently and is what is in the books of magic today, honoring Lucifer, their god. That's what this is all about.
Absolutely. And I think that it's pretty interesting that there's a Thebes in Greece and there's a Thebes in Egypt. So, the Theban town in Greece, I think, had something to do with magic. And that's what, Eccles is referencing in this Theban thing. But I think that Depp and Eccles both have had their ticket punched in the occult community. And I think they recognize fellow travelers. So I think that, people are expecting certain things for Eccles to get out and facilitate or make changes in the world. And that's why his new kind of project is this thing, Magic Revolution, which is to, he kind of says the same phrase every time, which is to take people out of the mundane, mediocre existence into a life of magic. And so I think they know. I think they know that he said, I think I told you this last week, is that when he was on the stand, they asked him if he knew anything about the occult. He was 18. He said, I know everything about the occult, which, was 20 years ago. So I do believe that he knows. I think they know. They know what he did. And, the sacrificial elements of, I don't want to, I mean, it's there's markings on the children when they were murdered that are consistent with the fact that they were sacrificed. They were cut in a certain way. And Damien Eccles right now is he puts an X on, he tattoos people for money. And he puts an X on, whatever body part they want. And the X is a kind of it has an occult meaning. It has a occult symbol. And so,
wow.
Yeah, it's really disturbing.
So I'm assuming you have a copy of his book, Life After Death is what it's called.
Correct.
I mean, this was published on September 18th of 2012. Do you have any idea how many copies have sold?
I don't. I think it's very well received and well reviewed on Amazon. I know that there's a bunch of commentary, and it had the support of a major publishing house.
Really?
So, yeah. So he went out on a book tour, and it was a very controlled environment. Only certain people were allowed to ask preset questions. And yeah, so I think it was Simon and Schuster who supported the book.
I just wanted to, again, you put out segments and quotes from the book Life After Death, which is to me, of course, a mockery of the Christian, ideal of resurrection and the mission of Jesus Christ is recorded in the New Testament. Here we have on page 358 what he's doing, the Abramelin ritual, which is again Good Friday, to begin it, right? A Christian holy day. I should say a Roman Catholic holy day, supposedly. Here's what he writes. And I want to get your comments on this, William. Quote, today on Good Friday, I began performing the Holy Guardian Angel Ritual. It's called HGA. Holy Guardian Angel Ritual is described in the book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Magi. It's a prayer that asks a higher self or outside intelligence for guidance, protection, and for forgiveness of all my weaknesses and sins. Expert practitioners wear white robes and burn candles and frankincense and use other esoteric paraphernalia. I obviously don't have all the materials he suggests, but I don't believe they're needed. I showered and put on clean white shoes and knelt to pray. If Aleister Crowley could do this ritual on horseback, then I can do it in a prison cell. Life After Death, page 97. What's your take on that ritual?
Well, I think it's a remarkable statement by Eccles that ties him to Aleister Crowley and shows his understanding of Crowley, the fact that he knew Crowley would do these rituals on horseback. When Crowley was traveling, he would still practice magic as he was traveling the world, if he was in Southeast Asia, India, etc. And Crowley himself practiced or did this ritual based upon the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage in his this place that he bought in northern Scotland called the Boleskine Manor, which has burned down within the last couple of years. I don't know if they're going to rebuild it, but the Holy Guardian Angel statement is remarkable on a lot of levels because it comes out of the the kind of Western esoteric tradition, and people have this holy guardian angel. But one of the interesting things about Crowley is that he defined his holy guardian angel as Lucifer. Like one of his most important statements of Crowley, which really reveals a lot. In 1904, Crowley received this book called the Book of the Law while he was in Egypt. It was supposedly dictated to him over his shoulder, and it became the central piece of his whole religion. And Book of the Law references this book they have in Masonic. There's supposed to be a Book of the Law in Masonic ritual, whether it's a Bible or a Quran. So this Book of the Law, he said he received, but this statement of him that this is like one of his most important statements that he's made that defines everything. And this entity that dictated him the Book of the Law in 1904 was called Iwas, the Lord of the Air. And he makes this statement. This is one thing, and this is probably people who want to get a grip on Crowley's thoughts and ideas and understand the coded blinds, the messages that he kept hidden in his writings, need to understand the following paragraph that I'm going to read. It starts, the B666, Crowley, he's referencing himself, has preferred to let names stand as they are and to proclaim it simply that Aiwass, the solar, phallic, hermetic Lucifer, is his own holy guardian angel and the devil, Satan, or Hadit, and that's a Egyptian god, of our particular unit of the starry universe. So he's basically admitting that his holy guardian angel, when he does the HGA, is the devil, and that Aiwass, who dictated the Book of the Law over his shoulder, was Lucifer. And it shows his coded terms. So he was a very serious Lucifer, Satan worshiper, and it shows that when Eccles is trying to do the HGA ritual, in the Crowley sense, he's trying to contact the devil.
Okay, yeah, it's the prince of the power of the air is referred to many times in the New Testament as being, of course, Satan, Lucifer, the devil. Okay, so that's clear. What I'm getting at is the parallels again, going back to the oh golly, the early rituals of Mormonism again, going and tying back into those. Oh, I'm sorry, their name just left my mind. The Elizabeth and Jonathan D. And,
right, yeah.
Right. Isn't that just the parallels between Jonathan D. and his holy guardian angels? Was, I mean, you read what he put out back in the 17th century, and it sounds like it's all a good thing. It's an angel coming to him to teaching him.
Right. I mean, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, Crowley himself said, he did all of these rituals as Aethers, AETHYR, these kind of different planes of things, to contact those. And he would tell people he was in contact with angels, but his angels oftentimes were malevolent. And, if you read through Crowley's writings, his magical writings, which he kept very detailed records, you can see him talk to all of these entities. And many of them, talk to him in very garbled, jumbled statements. But I don't think in his mind and what he was doing, he was contacting any angelic host. He was contacting discarnate spirits, fallen spirits.
So here on page 350, let me give you what you've written and want your comments to tie this in. Quote, the intent of the HGA, the Holy Guardian Angel process, according to Crowley, is to unite the magician, who is symbolized by the pentagram, with the external entity, which is Lucifer, symbolized by the hexagram, which together equals Crowley's master number 11. As stated earlier in this book, you've written, Aleister Crowley's HGA was Lucifer, or Satan, the devil. Then you find this, and this is where where it all wraps up to me. Considering his love for Aleister Crowley and occultism, Damien Eccles ends his book, Life After Death, with this ominous statement, and I quote, I want to make the world a more magical place. To give magic, this is M-A-G-I-C-K, ceremonial magic, right? A form that people will appreciate and that changes their lives. Now, that's the agenda. That is clearly stated as his agenda. And it's what's happening, why this is relevant today, ladies and gentlemen, why it's so important to focus on at this particular time of the year, entering into an election cycle, just a few days after this grand ceremony. this is going to change lives, and we have to be aware of what's going on, in my opinion. We have to be alert, be vigilant, and be understanding. Your comments, William.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, the Halloween is a high point in the year for occultists, and a lot of dastardly deeds happen on Halloween. It's an occult holiday, and I think it's something for every Christian person out there to be fully cognizant of. I think that, in my studies of murders and things, a lot of these awful events happen on, these occult holidays. So my opinion is to, or just warn people to be concerned and recognize that the Halloween really is something that comes out of Western paganism.
So when you see these rituals being performed in white clothes, I've talked to people about this, and people that I care about who are still very, very deeply involved in Mormonism. They go to the Mormon temples. They have these white clothes they have to wear. They have the white robes of the Mormon, quote, holy priesthood. And I'm telling them, listen, just because it's white doesn't mean it's good. I mean, Satanists are constantly putting white clothes on, and they don't believe me. They laugh at me.
Well, I mean, look at some of the more of the Masonic clothing that they wear. On the outside, it looks all, full of positive symbolism, but on the inside of like the Masonic apron, it's full of skull and crossbones and things like that. So don't be deceived by what people wear. And by their acts you shall know them.
The Apostle Paul warned us. He said, quote, don't be deceived, because even Satan himself will be transformed into an angel of light and appear to be very good, even to the point of deceiving the very elect, those who should know better. Right. So, I guess the message I want to make with all this, William, is please, ladies and gentlemen, don't fall into the trap that Satanism is just part of a Hollywood movie. It's just a bunch of make-believe. It's not true. It's just like Walt Disney would say, hocus pocus. The magical kingdom is something to be avoided, not to be a part of.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that in the occult, there's kind of these kind of sugar-coated pills that the entryway is for personal power, to experience other things, for changes in consciousness through things like Wicca. But once you get farther deeper, they're all pulling you towards this awful end of contacting spirits, of doing all kinds of ritual magic. And, if you give in, then what happens is they're always trying to facilitate change in the world according to their will, not God's will. So,
and just FYI, William, I know we can probably talk about this off the air, but our joint friend that actually introduced me to you, Dave, is listening. I'm sure listening tonight. He just emailed me that he'd be making a trip to your neck of the woods. I'd advise to meet him, and I know my home is always open to you to come to Utah. Let me take you on a guided tour. I want you to take some pictures, because you will be. I'm sure your jaw will be dropping. When you talk about what Damien wrote in Life After Death about the pentagram meeting the hexagram, oh, you will be blown away when you see this in Temple Square of Mormonism. It's so right there.
Hexagrams in Temple Square?
Oh, there's hexagrams and pentagrams all over Temple Square, and they meet together.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's the principles of magic. I mean, one of the things I point out in my book, too, is that there is a presumption by law enforcement officials that there is no connection between Satanism and crime. I talk about John Douglas and Ken Lanning. So I actually point out in my book all of these other occult crimes that occurred with people influenced by Satanism who murdered people. So there definitely is a correlation in the factual record, if you objectively look at it, that Satanism influences people to commit crimes.
Well, it's funny you bring up Stephen King, because just a few blocks out of Temple Square towards the east, between the Roman Catholic Cathedral of the Madeleine and Temple Square. There is this big, huge, ornate Masonic hall that up until recently was open to the public. You could go walk in and walk through it. I did that numbers of times, taking pictures, taking videos, because I'll tell you, it's they had a little plaque there, a signature plaque from Stephen King, saying this was, quote, one of his favorite places in all the world to come and meditate and receive inspiration for his books.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, you talk about creepy. This place is three levels of creepy. I mean, it's as you walk in, I couldn't believe this. They actually had this in the front case. Okay, you walk in through exactly 32 steps going up. You know, the 33rd step is where you enter into the building. You walk in, there's this red carpet, and you go down, and at the end of the red carpet is this enclosed glass, like a trophy case. Inside of this trophy case is this horrid little carved stone effigy, and it was a plaque on it. This is called Kaibab Itza. It's the name of this idol. Kaibab Itza. This little demonic looking thing with pointed teeth and grinning. This was actually excavated from a sacrificial Mayan well, a well that had thousands of sacrificed bodies in the bottom of it. And this little effigy was brought out and is now adorning this Masonic temple in Salt Lake City. I could not believe it.
Now that's remarkable. When I lived in San Francisco 20 years ago on Taylor Street, and right down the street from my place was the Masonic Temple for San Francisco, and it was across from a cathedral, and the Masonic Temple in San Francisco was covered in the finest marble. It was much nicer than the Christian cathedral, and you had the pillars of Boaz and Jachin were out there. It was incredible. It's full of occult symbology. Sometimes they let you walk around there, but it was 3 stories high. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's and you walk through and you see where they have they're worshiping the god of the East as he comes up. And but see, again, Joseph Smith became a Mason. His father, his brother Alvin, who died when he was young, were all high-level Masons. In fact, it was kind of funny, coincidental. There was this anti-Masonic party that came out. There was this Captain William Morgan, right, who was a Revolutionary War hero. I don't know if you know the story of Captain William Morgan.
Didn't they end up killing him?
Yeah, well, what happened was he was inducted into the Masonic Hall, and he says, "Oh my goodness, this is satanic," and wrote a series of exposés, books that he's going to publish, and so they put a death on him. The lodge of Batavia, New York, that eventually killed Captain William Morgan was Joseph Smith Sr.'s lodge, the father of Joseph Smith Jr. And here's the kicker: one of Joseph Smith's plural wives was none other than Lucinda Morgan, Captain William Morgan's wife.
Wow.
How does that work? I'm telling you.
Oh. Joseph Smith's life was something else. I mean, how many confirmed wives and kids did he have? Did they ever determine how many children he actually had?
At least 30. But here's the kicker. There's a book written and put by Illinois Free Press. It's called History of the Saints, okay, by William Bennett. Now, Bennett was a scamp. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's well documented. He was a scamp. But he was, at one time, the most trusted right-hand man of Joseph Smith. So he wrote this book after the death of Joseph called History of the Saints. And in it, he actually has pictures of, when he was a doctor of what? He specialized in abortions.
Wow.
He claimed with his tools, he went around to, he performed over 30 abortions of Joseph Smith's, spiritual wives. Okay.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And this is the stuff that the mainstream Mormon church is like, oh, you can't trust William Bennett. This book is just blasphemy against this wonderful prophet. it's the same type of media mind control techniques that's going on with Johnny Depp and this group.
I believe it. Didn't Joseph Smith have like he would be close to somebody for 3 years and then they would fall out and then he'd have a new sidekick and then they fall out. And didn't he have that kind of relationship with some of his closer followers or apostles?
Constantly. Whether it's Sidney Rigdon, who there's a sordid history of Sidney Rigdon, by the way, a whole other story for another show. But then there was, of course, Bennett, who was instrumental during the Nauvoo years for getting the Illinois state to arm the Mormon militia. I mean, you're talking over in a 3-year period of time, 3,500 men under arms with uniforms, with the most up-to-date muskets and bayonets and cannons of all. Keep in mind, this is in the early 1840s when there was not even 500 state militia under arms.
Right.
This is huge. Even more so than the federal government had under arms at the time.
That's remarkable. That's
a major force. So William C.
Nauvoo was the second biggest city next to Chicago, right, for a while.
Absolutely. William C. Bennett was instrumental. Yes, he was a scamp and a scallywag, but my goodness, he knew how to play the political card to bring money into Nauvoo. It was amazing. That's the story. And then after Bennett, leaves the fold for whatever reason, you see the rise of the Nauvoo Expositor. Okay.
Right. The Nauvoo Expositor is what led to Smith's death, right? Didn't he destroy the printing press, and then that was basically rolled into his death, right?
Yeah. William Law was his first counselor, and well respected, and by all accounts a very honorable and good man. But what happened was William Law's wife was propositioned by Joseph to become his spiritual wife. William Law got wind of it and was so shocked that he basically, put his money and put the printing press in Nauvoo Expositor to tell the story, to expose what was happening. That's what it was all about. Now, back then, you have to realize that there was no radio, books, or TV, or anything. Of course there wasn't. The only means of communication was newspapers. So under both the U.S. Constitution at the time and the freedom of the press, anybody that destroyed a working press was guilty of treason and it's a death sentence. Wow. So this was no simple thing. When Joseph Smith ordered it as a public nuisance to be destroyed and the type scattered all through the streets of Nauvoo, that was, if convicted of that, it was a capital offense. He would have been shot by firing squad or hung. Okay, it was no mean thing, right? So yeah, you're right, exactly right. That's what led to the indictments. And he didn't die as a martyr. He was actually died in a gun battle. They smuggled in pistols to him. He's a prisoner under state law to be tried for high treason. And he shot and killed 2 guards coming up the stairs to take him.
They never tell that story, too, in Mormonism, right?
Of course not. It's ridiculous, but it's a fact. It's an absolute fact that Joseph and his brother Hiram had guns and fired onto the Carthage militia that was coming up to remove him from Carthage to Chicago for trial. He was under, because there was a fear that he would marshal the Nauvoo Legion, come against him, and it would be a bloodbath, a war, basically.
Did they ever find out where he was buried?
Well, he was actually buried there in Nauvoo, but then it was recently, he was exhumed fairly quite a long time ago and was actually moved someplace else. I'm not exactly sure where he's buried now. Yeah,
I remember reading somewhere that all of his apostles basically jumped ship on him and said, "Hey, man, you're fake." Isn't that true?
Well, that happened during the Kirtland era. Okay, there was during Kirtland, Ohio, the church had actually basically divided. There was a branch that went to Missouri. Okay, but the main body of the apostles and the closest to him stayed in Kirtland. Now, during this time, he was involved in a bank scheme, a bank fraud. He formed a anti-banking society, issued his own currency, And it was absolutely something the Federal Reserve would be proud of today because he had no real assets to cover his fraudulent banknotes. And what happened eventually when that bubble burst, the men close to him, his counselors at the time, Oliver Cowdery and others, were basically bankrupted over it. It was an absolute scandal, and he was basically tarred and feathered and ridden out of town on a rail, not by mobs, but by the Mormon people themselves.
Wow.
And so he ends up in Missouri, and suddenly he's accepted, by divine providence to them that he was there leading them in Missouri, and the rest, he went from Missouri out into Illinois. And yeah, boy, talk about the Mormon press making it out to be such a glorified thing, and all this mob persecution. That's what I'm talking about here. The parallels between the Mormon story and what the media has done for, this Memphis 3, the parallels are quite amazing, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it's remarkable. Yeah. I mean, there's always the story underneath the media story these days. So, it's not surprising the West Memphis 3 story is the complete opposite of what the media is telling you. So,
yep, that's what we call it, the story behind the story. That's what
this is the West Memphis 3 and occultism and Satanism is the real story behind the phony story of the mockumentaries, documentaries, and these self-serving autobiographies.
Oh, I got to tell you, my partner in the radio station in the early years when we did the story behind the story, Warren Anderson, was like a bulldog, and he uncovered the connections in the Process Church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what was going on with Mormonism. It was amazing how that ties in. He did his homework on it, and him and I were both, active Mormons at the time, and yet we were like, how is this happening? We're trying to sort it all out. We got so many death threats. It was amazing when we started going into the Process Church. I mean, and what was scary to me was when the death threats stopped, because then they realized we weren't being afraid of their death threats. I think they were really trying to do something at that point.
I believe it. I mean, there's definitely a satanic underground in this country, and they definitely do not like any light shined on them. So I know that from experience.
Yeah, and so we faced that, and Warren was just grinning. He says, "We made him mad now." I says, "Is it safe to keep doing?" He says, "I don't care. I really, I love my family, and they might want to hurt us through our family, but he was so frustrated as an editor, and great reporter of the daily newspaper down there, and was so frustrated at stories he'd researched and dug into, and then being censored, just not being allowed to run.
Spiked.
Yep. Spiked. Yeah, he was so frustrated with that.
I mean, the unfortunate thing, prior to the internet, that was much more common, and often when a story got spiked, there was no secondary route people could go to. Maybe I know, what was it? L. Ron Hubbard's son had to go to Penthouse to tell his story. That was the only magazine that would run stuff like that. So nobody could really access these stories that countered public propaganda, which, thank God for the internet and the ability for people to test facts. I think that's really helped everybody all around the world, is to able to look back at history and go, okay, what really happened?
Yeah. And so when I as a brainwashed Mormon, I got to tell you, it wasn't until I started reading my ancestors' journals, my great grandfathers on my mother's side, Joseph Leland Haywood. He kept prodigious journals. He was Brigham Young's right-hand man. He was the first Marshal of Utah Territory, right? Oh my goodness, the things and I was stunned that he was deeply involved in counterfeiting coin. He was a counterfeiting ring, and that Brigham Young and Joseph Smith were deeply involved in that for the sole purpose of bilking the Gentiles, as they called it, because there was no means, by any means necessary, the Mormon kingdom had to roll forth.
Right.
And so the ends would always justify the means. He would rationalize this away as not being illegal because under God's eyes it was totally moral and upright. Right? I
Yeah,
mean,
didn't Smith have a hit squad or like a couple hitmen? I remember reading some story like didn't the head of Missouri or one of these countries get shot?
yeah, that's the whole story of, well, Lilburn Boggs, the governor of Missouri, actually issued an extermination order that's infamous in Mormon history. Okay, the Mormons of today think how evil Lilburn Boggs was, but the story behind the story of that goes back to, again, Sidney Rigdon on Independence Day gave a speech called the Salt of the Earth speech, where Sidney Rigdon basically, fire and brimstone, he said that who's ever not joined up with the Mormons or against the Mormons. So all Gentiles are like the salt of the earth that's lost its savor and must be cast out under the foot of men. So from that, Joseph okayed these, they called them the Danite squads. They would actually go out with their faces painted black and rob and take property of Gentile non-Mormon farms.
Hmm.
Okay, so there was such an outcry over that to the governor to bring the militia of Missouri to bear to stop this they actually one of the orders that went to Lilburn Boggs was intercepted by a Mormon mobster calling for the extermination of the Gentiles in all of Far West area. Now, that's what started. That precipitated it. So Lilburn Boggs then just said, well, I'll fight fire with fire. If they're going to exterminate the non-Mormons, then I'll issue through the militia duly certified an extermination order for the Mormons. They either leave the state or they're exterminated.
Gotcha.
That's what happened. That's the story behind the story on Lilburn Boggs. And so you have the Danites, okay, under Joseph Smith. These are the secret, basically the secret police. There was some infamous cutthroats that were part of that went after to kill Lilburn Boggs and very nearly did. He was nearly killed, shot in his own home. Oh yeah, this is sordid, but absolutely true.
Yeah, it's all excised from Mormon histories too. Just all that stuff.
It is
Sanitized history.
And millions of good Mormon people believe it. They just don't question it, and they just don't look at the actual historical facts because I don't know whether their eyes are blinded or whether they just are so brainwashed they refuse to accept it. It blows me away, frankly. And I did for years and years. I didn't believe it either.
But don't you think that Joseph Smith had the capacity to kind of hone his message and hone, his new religion the way so if somebody from the early stages didn't believe, then he would fix something and have an additional revelation or an additional idea for the new converts not to be dissuaded from joining, things like that. So kind of like any huckster, they build on their past experiences. So the con gets better and better as the decades go on, so to speak.
Well, I think so, but I submit to you, it's more than just a con. If you come to Utah and see the evidence, that I'll show you, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's not so much a con as the actual priesthood of Satan being put on the earth in power. Because see, there's real spiritual energy that comes out of that, and just like in this book, Life After Death, Damien is talking about tapping into this power and it's changing his life.
Yeah, I mean, he believes that he can manipulate energy. He does it through Reiki, R-E-I-K-I, and that energy's pulled through the body. So he believes in the energy of the human body and the ability to manipulate things outside of it. So, I think that if he's able to do that, if he's able to do things that are beyond normal human behavior, that's probably why he has so many ardent supporters. I believe in spiritual manifestation. So, and that's what really magicians do. They want to make change and in accordance with their will and use powers that are spiritual, demons, so it all fits together. I think that the modern world has lost its ability to kind of see that. They've been convinced that it doesn't exist. But, the Old Testament tells about witches and the witch at Endor. And, I think that even Western history talks about that. It probably is the same in all societies worldwide. The, the witch doctor, the witch. So I think that Damien Eccles probably sees himself as somebody within that continuum, It's a modern witch.
It's all about power and mammon, money, which is another demonic entity that's separate and tied to Lucifer. Is mammon. It's a very real demonic entity. Now, listen, this is what I want to kind of leave our listeners with. Hillary Clinton is power drunk. She's power mad. She wants the power. Now, and really that's all these corrupt politicians in Washington D.C. bureaucrats. It's about power and the brokering of power. Would you agree?
Yes.
Now, in the Mormon temple, the sacred thing you're given, the sacred benediction and the temple endowment ritual. Now, it's people say, well, it's sacred, not secret. But I think it's not either one. It's hellish, because the whole crowning pinnacle that you're blessed when you go through the endowment. The endowment is a power. Here is what you're given in the LDS Mormon hierarchy. You're given power, and I quote, power in the priesthood be upon me and upon my posterity through all generations of time and throughout all eternity. That's the esoteric, occultic benediction given to every Mormon faithful when they go through the Mormon temple. Power in the priesthood. That's all. That's what it's all about.
Did you see manifestations of priesthood power?
Absolutely. That's what caused me such a problem. Is like in Mormonism, there is priesthood power manifest. There's no doubt about it. Sick are healed. There's sixth sense type of premonitions. People hear disembodied voices. Things move. It's like very much like The Exorcist, almost. There's power there that happens. No doubt about it. I remember one time.
Signifies people's, dedication to the Mormonism.
Yeah, one time as a devout Mormon in the celestial room of the temple, after going and receiving, this endowment in proxy, I'm sitting there with my immediate family, and we're praying in one of these ceiling rooms, and a rushing force comes through there, knocks us all over, knocks us down, and the chandelier is swaying back and forth and tinkling and rippling.
Wow.
Now, there's no doubt there was a power force there.
It's remarkable.
And so you're thinking, well, it's God. Well, it's not. It's the prince of the power of the air, period.
That's amazing. The Mormons put up such a lily white front. Nobody drinks. Everybody's well dressed. They're clean cut. It's
and they got to wear white shirts and ties. White. If you go to the temple, if you're worthy if you don't smoke or drink, pay your full tithing, and swear allegiance to the Mormon prophet, you pass the test, right? You're deemed worthy to go into the temple, and there you're dressed in all white. Even your shoes are white. You sit there and you pray these esoteric prayers that are tied, and they're completely Masonic in origin, completely and totally.
Okay. Saw some video where somebody snuck into one of the temples and showed the white sheet with the hole, and shaking hands with another guy with a white glove. Did you go through that kind of?
Absolutely, that's absolutely correct, and it's what goes on there. They've changed it somewhat in the early '90s. They had a broad change because there used to be these what's called executions of the penalties, where if you told the secrets outside the temple, this is ways in which life may be taken. They would slit your throat, open up your chest, and then your abdomen. Okay.
Did that actually ever happen?
Oh, it did in the early days, for sure. Absolutely. You kept the secret or you died.
Well, isn't that the same with Masonry?
Exactly.
So you slit your own throat or whatever?
as in Captain William Morgan's classic example. He was brought in, he spilled the beans, and they killed him. He was one of dozens.
Interesting. Was he ritually murdered? Do you know if they slit his throat or opened his abdomen?
Yeah, they absolutely slit his throat, and they found his body in the Niagara River. Absolutely, he was ritually cut. Absolutely.
Fascinating.
So yeah, and then you have, it's been changed, but the true order of Mormon prayer in the temple is taught. You go around this altar and you raise your hands up and down 3 times, and then back then you actually said the words Pele El, which interpreted in Hebrew is praying to El, Lucifer.
Mm.
It's a prayer to Luciferian deity.
Ideas.
And in the temple ritual itself, when Adam and Eve first supposedly offered that prayer, who should appear but Satan himself first? Yeah, it teaches you that it's Satan that's teaching Adam and Eve.
Wow, that's really Luciferian,
It is. It's Satan. And I had no idea till my eyes were open, and I'm sitting there one day and says, wait a minute, what am I doing? This is satanic.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, that's the original thing, is that, Lucifer is seen as the helper of Adam and Eve, the original bringer of knowledge, eat the truth.
And that's Mormon doctrine. They believe that the fall, this is on the Book of Mormon, by the way, that the fall of Adam and Eve was a very needful thing, a good thing. Otherwise, mankind wouldn't know evil or know right from wrong. It had to have happened. That Satan was very benevolent in making this happen. See?
Oh, that's really
yeah. So it's the parallels between Crowley, between Damien Eccles and others. I mean, seeing it's how it's just not coincidental. It's all a movement.
Absolutely. There's no doubt that these guys have all referenced the magical books before them, like Crowley did. He was an aggregator, really an occult scholar in a lot of ways. And Damien Eccles is the same thing. And I suspect Joseph Smith had tons of secret books that nobody really ever saw. I bet he was definitely doing his own reading and getting inspiration from cryptic text. I wouldn't be surprised at that at all.
Yeah, just again, Michael Quinn's book, Early Mormonism, The Magic Worldview, puts that completely to rest and completely shows his sigils, his Jupiter talismans, the whole 9 yards. Michael Quinn laid it all out there, warts and all. Yeah. The Mormon people that read the book say, so what? So he was into this. Well, it's all about white magic and good spiritual magic. No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
Yeah, that's a common kind of excuse for a lot of these guys' magical behavior. Is, I'm into white magic. I think when Eccles' girlfriend said that, he would say that he was only into white magic, but she told somebody that he would be lying. And there was actually a kind of statement by Anton LaVey that said there really isn't anything white or black magic. It's just magic. You can term it that, but there really isn't. That distinction is really just for public consumption. Something to that effect. That's not a verbatim quote. I got to find that. But
yeah, you're right. And studying LaVey's works and just to get a handle on this and what Jonathan D. and Edward Kelly did. I mean, I've studied all of their writings, their history. To look at it without seeing the full picture, you think, wow, they're powerful, and Queen Elizabeth obviously thought there was power there too, right?
Absolutely. He was her court astrologer.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the end of our allotted time tonight. We're entering a very strange time. Just again, look to the source of all truth. This is what we're talking about. It's truth versus lies. All right. Thanks again, William Ramsey, for being on a guest on our show. God bless you. Read his books, ladies and gentlemen. Get a hold of them. And be safe this Halloween, okay? Don't let your kids go out alone. There's too many 8-year-olds that go up missing, all right? Be well. Be safe is our prayer tonight. Thanks for listening.
listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Barbara DeLong, host of Nightlight Radio, inviting you to join me on a cosmic journey, exploring a metaphysical montage of spiritual material, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between, including spiritual readings for those who seek enlightenment. Let Nightlight provide you with equal measure of light, love and laughter, insight, wisdom, and inspiration. Monday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on Studio B, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
Who are we? Where do we come from? Are you curious about the origins of the human race? Join me, Gavin McCall, and a variety of guests on Ancient Humans, where we decipher world events, explore scientific